Hey guys, Dr. Brady Salcido here with Vitality Family Chiropractic, and probably one of the most common questions that we get either from people who are calling into our office or maybe they heard from a friend who's a patient in our office that says chiropractic can help your child's ear infection. And most commonly the response is, how in the world can a chiropractor help my child's ears? How can they help their ear infections? Well, you see there's a wall of testimonials behind us, and some of those are cases of children who've been going through constant recurring ear infections with no luck until chiropractic saved the day and has actually helped not only correct the cause of the ear infections, but kept them away so they can go swimming more without getting these constant ear infections and just be healthier from season to season. And so we're gonna be talking about how exactly that works and how it could help your child. So let's break this down just a little bit, and I wanna give a little bit of a story to kind of preface this a little bit. I want you to think, let's say we put a tub of water in your backyard. Okay. Now, what tends to happen after we leave that tub of water sitting out there for maybe like a week, let's say? It starts to fill up with bugs, right? It starts to fill up with bacteria, bugs, pests, all these things that we don't like. Now, that's not cool. I don't like that. So there's a couple different options that we have. One, we can go for the bugs, or we can go for the source of the problem. So going for the source of the bugs would be taking things like pest killer and all sorts of sprays and chemicals, putting them on the bugs and killing the bugs and making sure they all go away. But guess what? What tends to happen if we don't remove that bucket of water? The bugs start to come back, right? That's the problem, is it's just a short-term solution to a long-term problem. Or the other solution is you can take away the bucket of water, you can pour it out, and the bugs don't come back because they don't have a home to live in. So when we're talking about an ear infection, hopefully this kind of prefaces this a little bit, is an ear infection typically occurs when there's just a body of fluid just kind of hanging out in that middle ear. And now what happens is when that fluid just starts to sit there, it creates a perfect environment for bacteria and bugs to start to hang out and start to grow. And that's not what we want, and that tends to lead towards the common causes of ear infections. Now again, same with the bucket of water analogy, you can do the same thing with the ears. We can either go ahead and try to kill the bugs with some antibiotics or some other medications, or we can try to figure out what is the source of the ear infection in the first place. Now we're looking at our ears and how they're supposed to drain. They actually are connected. You can see here's your inner ear, there's your outer ear, excuse my drawing, and you have your eardrum right here, and then you have your eustachian tube, which comes right down here. And the purpose of that eustachian tube is to actually milk that fluid, because it's not actually more like water, it's more like mucus, as icky as that sounds. And the whole purpose is to get that fluid down this eustachian tube, out towards the back of your throat, and then out so your body can get rid of it. Now what happens is if there's any issues along this eustachian tube, it's going to affect its ability to drain, because remember, if it's not actually working properly, it's not going to be able to do its job. Fluid's going to start building up in the middle ear, leaving a perfect environment for an ear infection, especially chronic ear infections. Now the way this eustachian tube is able to get that fluid out is through this special muscle called the tensor villi palatini. I'm not going to test you on it, it's not going to be on a quiz, but essentially the purpose of this muscle, when it contracts, is to help milk fluid down this eustachian tube out towards the back of the throat. And that's the whole purpose of it. But if we find that the tensor villi palatini muscle is not doing its job, and the tensor villi palatini muscle connects to the top of your mouth, which would be like your hard palate, and connects right to the eustachian tube. But if that nerve that's supplying the muscle isn't doing its job, the muscle is not going to fire properly. And so one of the most common reasons that this muscle stops working properly is through misalignments in the upper neck, or what we call subluxations. And subluxations are a $10 chiropractic fancy term for a misalignment in the spine that starts to adversely irritate and affect that nerve that's exiting right in between it. Now when you look at this area, what my drawing is right here, unfortunately it's not the best drawing, I was never an artist, is you have your head up here and you have your first two vertebrae of your upper cervical spine, which would be right about here on your neck. Now this area controls and houses the very important nerve that controls that tensor villi palatini muscle, and typically when any of these vertebrae get misaligned in that upper cervical area, that can irritate and put tension and stress on this nerve, causing the tensor villi palatini muscle to not do its job properly, which leads to fluid building up in the inner ear, creating a perfect environment for an ear infection. Now classically we have patients who come in and the child's had multiple ear infections, or maybe just one, and they go, these ear infections just won't go away. We've done rounds and rounds of antibiotics, which not only get rid of this bacteria, they also get rid of your good bacteria in your gut too, which will lower the immune response. So they've just shown that ear infections are more likely to recur after antibiotic use. So they're great in the short term to help get rid of the problem, but sometimes they can lead to some other problems down the road. Now what happens is that kills all the good bacteria in your gut, but it also kills the bad bacteria as well. And so where chiropractic comes into this picture is chiropractic says, let's get to the source of the problem. And so what we do is when the child comes into our office, we examine and scan this area of their spine using advanced state-of-the-art space certified technology that measures for inflammation in this area and measures for stress building up in that area. And if we do find there's an issue in this area, we know that's going to be adversely affecting this nerve. And if we do find that's the case, then we know there's something that we can do to help to release tension off that tensor villi palatini muscle and get that ear infection resolving. And I always tell parents on their very first adjustment with their child, which is always extremely gentle and specific. It's not the loud cracking and popping that you maybe see on YouTube. It's very gentle, very specific for children. And what that does, I always tell parents, watch out for that first one, because as soon as we get this muscle working properly, the floodgates are going to open, and most of the time you'll see them drain for their nose, their mouth, I mean, everywhere. It's kind of disgusting, but it's good because it's getting that fluid out from the inner ear and getting their body to get rid of the source of the problem so that those ear infections don't come back. And so that's where chiropractic comes into the picture. Now, I'm sure some of you are asking, well, how in the world did my child get one of these misalignments in the upper neck? How would that happen? One of the most common areas or instances where this occurs is from birth. Birth isn't just traumatic for mom, it can be traumatic for baby as well, and this can be especially heightened when there's interventions involved. So things like Pitocin, C-section, forceps, vacuums, any intervention that puts stress on the child, especially on their neck and skull, leaves them at a much higher prevalence and likelihood of getting these misalignments in their upper neck. So I always tell parents, if you know your child had maybe a more challenging birth, it was a prolonged labor, they had some interventions used, it's always good to get your child checked to make sure those misalignments aren't going to be affecting their ability to properly drain. The other one, and the second most common one, is from trauma now, especially young boys who are pretty active. They tend to fall quite often, and sometimes we don't always see them when they fall, or maybe sometimes you do see them when they fall, and they fall a lot, especially when they're learning to walk, move, and sometimes they can fall right on their head and neck, fall right onto the ground. If you've ever seen America's Funniest Home Videos, you can see just how drastic that can get, especially for children, and that can also lead to other likelihood that they have these misalignments in their upper neck. So I always say, best to get your child checked, because the great thing about this is we use specific state-of-the-art technology that gives us more objective data to let you be able to see where the actual problem is, so you can see if your child truly indeed does have interference and have stress building up in this upper cervical spine that could be leading to their ear infections. And we've been so blessed to help so many children with their ear infections, and we have so many great stories that you can find on our webpage. Just look at our Google listings and you'll be able to see some great stories from some other parents who've had great success with their child and with their ear infections. So thank you so much for watching this video. Hopefully this helps you kind of get an idea of what's going on with your child and their ear infections, and hopefully we look forward to serving you and helping you and your family.